my question to Mr. Kapustin. So as I already said at the beginning that the war in Ukraine started 3 years ago, caused the biggest and fastest displacement of Ukrainians in Europe from Second World War. May I ask you to create a picture how many Ukrainians arrived to European countries, mainly in which countries, how they were received, and what are the main challenges in coordinating with the hosting countries?
First, thank you, Katerina. Thank you for inviting, together with GCSP Apéro Foundation and UMEF University, to this important event where we can discuss the issue which profoundly affected millions of Ukrainians. And I'm especially honored to share this panel with Ambassador McKinley. During your chairmanship of the organization, Ukraine joined the International Organization of Migration in 2001. So it was during your term. And your role in strengthening Ukraine's ties with IOM remains very much appreciated in Ukraine. Let me start by clarifying a little bit legal context. First, a word on terminology. We often hear the notion, the war in Ukraine. And it's important to be precise here in this context. And we are dealing not with the civil conflict inside the country. It's international armed conflict caused by Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022 in violation of UN Charter. And this matters. This matters because it shapes how Ukrainians are legally classified. Most are not refugees in the sense which defined by the 1951 Convention on Refugees and the Protocol. They are not fleeing persecution by their own government. Instead, they are the people forcibly displaced by the war. They fall under so-called temporary protection schemes, which is emergency response for the mass influxes, and not refugee status as defined by default. And let me give you, as Katerina already mentioned, that is the fastest growing and the most significant crisis since the World War II. Let me illustrate this by some figures. In just 3 weeks after the invasion started, over 3 million people fled Ukraine. By mid-2022, 14 million were displaced, 7 million internally and 6.3 million abroad. As of now, over 11 million Ukrainians remain displaced, nearly a quarter of the population. Around 6.9 million are outside Ukraine, and 6.4 million of them, which comprises 92%, are in Europe. Within the EU, some statistics within the EU, as of January 2025, Germany, 1.1 million, which is 27% of the EU total. Poland, 1 million, 23% of the EU total. Czech Republic, 400,000, 9% of the EU total. Beyond EU, we very much appreciate the aid provided by countries like Norway, Switzerland, the host country, Moldova, and also US and Canada, which host over 500,000 of Ukrainians. So in this regard, I would like, there are representatives of different countries here gathered together. So therefore, I would like to take this moment to sincerely thank all countries and all people around the world and communities which opened their doors and hearts to Ukrainians fleeing this war. Your solidarity is very much appreciated in Ukraine, beyond Ukraine, and will not be forgotten. So as to the EU response, A pivotal step was made by EU with the first ever activation of the Temporary Protection Directive in March 2022. This gave Ukrainians immediate access to residency, work, healthcare, education, without going through normal, regular asylum procedures. Of course, some countries are under greater pressure and very well known. I mentioned certain countries, but it's also worth to mention neighboring countries, so like Moldova, Poland, Hungary, a bit more distant like Czech Republic. And the EU Pact on Migration and Asylum aims to address these through fair responsibility sharing between the countries. But we have to acknowledge that international funding is not keeping the pace. And then I give you another statistic to illustrate. The 2022 regional refugee response plan for Ukrainians was only 42% funded. And as we look into in 2025, so currently we are already in April, and the plan 2025 plan is fair and even worse. Only 3% funded so far. This funding gap limits the capacity of humanitarian actors and increases the strains on host countries. And the key coordination challenges. There are several areas where Ukraine has been working closely with UNHCR and host governments. First, it's related to facilitating short-term travel to Ukraine without losing temporary protection rights. That is important for those who evaluating return options. Another areas, it's protecting vulnerable groups, especially children and from the institution, and combating human trafficking and gender-based violence. To help address this, the newly established Ministry of National Unity launched the project so-called Unity Hubs across the Europe, where the people can find safe spaces offering support and services for displaced Ukrainians. So at this point I will stop and then continue later.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kapustin. About social integration, this is a quite acute question concerning difficult differences in religions, in mentality, in culture. So how Ukrainians are adapting in European countries and in Switzerland, and what is the role of national governments and international organizations like UNHCR to help it?
Yeah, on social integration, thank you for this question. One factor that shaped the response to the Ukrainian displacement crisis, it was cultural proximity. So Ukrainians are largely seen and see themselves as Europeans, so shared values, Christian traditions, relatively high level of education, all that have eased initial integration in the receiving societies. But of course, over the time, the fatigue is a real risk for any country, both among host societies and displaced populations. And despite economic challenges and stretched services, host communities have shown remarkable solidarity. But still, we need to build mutual understanding, address cultural and communication gaps, and fight discrimination, misinformation, and stereotypes. So the role of the UNHCR and the International Organization of Migration. So both of the organization help a lot. Their role is indispensable from a coordinated the refugee response plan, which I mentioned since 2022, to facilitating access to employment, healthcare, protection, Both organizations proven being agile and effective. Let me share some key findings from recent surveys. So language skills, employment, school enrollment, all those are steadily improving. In 2024, the labor force, and I'm referring now to the latest report from the UNHCR, high employment rates but low wages, a party assessment of Ukrainian refugees in neighboring countries, which was issued in March 2025. So there is a table on employment rate and labor force participations. And of course, I mean, it's not throughout the entire European region, not through entire EU, but it takes rather 10 regional refugee response plan countries: Bulgaria, Czechia, Estonia, Hungary, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Moldova, Romania, and Slovakia. And so those two indications. The first one, in 2022, the labor force participation rate among Ukrainians in Europe reached 70%, close to the host average of 73%. Employment rate rose 10 percentage points from the previous year. Now it's at 64%. But as I mentioned, it's not for Switzerland. It's for those countries, 10 countries I mentioned, mostly bordering with Ukraine. However, many still face unemployment due to the language and accreditation issues. So economic integration, like in Poland, those persons being displaced, they contribute between 0.7 to 1.1 of GDP in 2023. In Czech Republic, they paid twice as much in taxes as they received in social benefits. So when we talk about refugee fatigue, maybe it's worth also asking, can we afford not to invest in the potential of those people being displaced? On the return intentions, the mass majority of Ukrainians abroad still hope to return, but the numbers are decreasing. And the statistic from 2023 and 2024 shows this, very vividly present that trend. In 2023, 77% said that they wanted to return someday. In 2024, end of 2020, this has dropped to 61%. 12 say that they did not intend to return, and 27 were undecided. That is the latest what I have as of end of 2024. So over 1 million people have already returned and stayed for at least 3 months. But the security situation, that is the key, and it remains the biggest barrier to large-scale return. From the government perspective, every displaced Ukrainian is very wanted back home. So their skills and experience will be crucial for recovery and rebuilding. That is why we are prioritizing policies that enable safe, voluntary, and dignified return, while calling on international partners to keep supporting resilience and reconstruction.
Thank you. I have another question to you. With the European Union relatively open approach to Ukrainian refugees, could it become a model, or can it influence global norms in more inclusive way regarding migration and refugees? Or its opposite, it will, it is an exception which is connected with geopolitical situation, and it will just reinforce this situation, this inequality, and this division, geopolitical division.
Yeah, thank you for this question. Important to highlight on this. Of course, I think the Ukrainian case offers important lens for looking at the refugee protection might be heading both in Europe and beyond. I already mentioned about the EU response to the Ukrainian displacement. The temporary Protection Directive, which had not been used before and was activated very quickly after the invasion. So it was like in March 2022, literally after like 2-3 weeks after invasion. That gave Ukrainians across the EU immediate access to stay, work, go to school, get health care without going through the long asylum procedures. It's still in place until at least March 2026, and it was a lifeline for millions of Ukrainians. But it is a big but. It's called temporary protection for a reason. It does not provide long-term certainty for those people. People might not feel secure signing a lease or planning a career if they don't know what happens in 2 years. So it's, as you know, it's extended on an annual basis. And those people, they're still like on the hook, you know, what will happen in several months, whether they extend it or not. And that uncertainty is real. Also, how protection applies varies from country to country. The directive I mentioned is EU-wide, but the application and national perspective is very different, and you can find you in very different situation, being like in it's EU, in Germany, Poland, or Italy. So the application of those rules will be very different sometimes. Right now, EU member states are debating what comes next. Do they extend protection again? Do they transition it to something else? And the decision made this year will tell us a lot about whether this model really works in the long run. Whether it would be the model for the future, not only for the European region, but also for regions beyond Europe. Whether it's one-time exception or template. It's true, the political and geographical proximity of Ukraine played a major role. But nothing precludes it from not being replicated in other regions. The Temporary Protection Directive showed that it's possible to coordinate fast, collective protection at scale, and to do so in a way that respects people's dignity. That's something which other regions can learn from. There is real potential here for regional frameworks like this, not just in Europe, but elsewhere, that grounded in cooperation, shared responsibility, and clarity. It just requires political will and agreement on basic principles. Who is going to be protected, for how long, and what rights they have. So the answer to that question, yes, there is a real potential for Ukrainian displacement experience to influence norms in a more inclusive and pragmatic direction.
Thank you very much.